It's over 50 years since Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring was published in 1962, a book that is credited with launching environmental awareness. The idea that the Earth's natural balance could be altered, changed, or damaged by the intervention of a species was a revelation at that time.
And a sobering thought when the species in question is ourselves, the human race.
Silent Spring revealed the damage that large-scale use of pesticides was causing the bird population. The thought of a spring silent, without the call of young birds eradicated as a side effect of human industrial processes, was and remains extremely evocative.
A call to action to oppose the pollution, to protect and nurture our planet.
A planet which for the first time was viewed from space in the 1960s and recognized as a fragile, isolated Earth sustaining our lives through natural processes. The creation of the Environmental Protection Agency in the USA is partly credited to the impacts of Silent Spring, and Al Gore, most famous for his work on raising awareness of climate change, also took inspiration from this classic environmental wake-up call. In our thoughts, Silent Spring is a tributary of a stream of knowledge, events, circumstances, and confirmation that has swelled into a massive river. We are calling this river the Pollution Sensitivity River. Not all of its tributaries are polluting events. As our awareness of pollution grew over the years, mostly unfortunately due to catastrophic environmental events, other tributaries sprang up. Tributaries of scientific knowledge, national policies, and international collaboration to fight pollution and take responsibility, to protect our environment, to reduce consumption of resources so that future generations might benefit from the same resources, to create a sustainable society that is responsible for its actions.
Recognizing past failures, acting now to meet the challenges. A future that we are creating to cater for the humans of the future. The welfare of our planet, its animals, its ecosystems. Why? What are the reasons for these massive currents, these mega tendencies, these fundamental changes in awareness?
We believe that there is a strong basic human desire not to pollute. We just don't like seeing the impact or living in the products of pollution. It disturbs us and forces us into action. As science has increased our knowledge of pollution, and technology like the internet has increased information sharing radically, we are on a pathway of awakening and realization that we need to change. Results of this have been extraordinary, with the emergence of mega tendencies or forces shaping the world. Global initiatives such as the United Nations-led efforts to fight climate change and to establish the Sustainable Development Goals. International agreements binding countries to promises to reduce emissions. The transition of energy to a low-carbon technology. International economic entities guiding businesses to be more climate aware. Changing the way they do business to care more for the planet. Our concerns about plastic and the oceans are leading to radical changes. Our need to recycle and our willingness to do it. Our growing awareness that agriculture needs to be more efficient, especially as our population grows in the coming decades. Humans are grouping together at every level to fight pollution. The impact of this massive river, its huge currents of mainstream megatendencies, are changing our world, shaping our daily lives, our education, our social awareness, the way we live, and the way we work now and in the future. This is also giving us a chance, a huge opportunity for business to improve and optimize results for the long term. What is the course of this river? Where are its springs, its tributaries? How has it permeated our lives so much? In 1962, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring was a wake-up call to the unintended and unknown negative impacts of the large-scale use of pesticides. In 1973, at the height of global energy supply concerns, we were told that lead products in fuel were causing an accumulation of toxic chemicals in our bodies and our ecosystems. With public support, the phase-out and ban of leaded fuel on a worldwide scale started. In 1984, a tragic pollution event at Bhopal in India led to the deaths of over 3,500 people when a deadly gas leak from a pesticide plant invaded neighboring settlements. Up to 500,000 people were affected by what is considered as the world's worst industrial disaster.
We started to realize the direct dangers of pollution to human life and our responsibility to protect populations where industrial operations are situated.
In 1986, we experienced the world's biggest nuclear disaster when the Chernobyl reactor in Russia melted down and released a colossal amount of radioactive pollution that impacted several countries and left a global radioactive signature. Communities close to the site fled to avoid exposure to radiation.
The invisible nature of the damage and the fear factor of the unknown has created a resistance to the nuclear industry that persists until today.
Throughout the 70s and 80s, we lived with numerous oil spills from oil tankers that created havoc with our marine wildlife and shores. In 1989, the supertanker Exxon Valdez caused a major spill in a pristine part of Alaska. The images of oil-soaked seabirds and marine animals, along with devastated shorelines, laid the foundations of our determination to protect the world's marine ecosystems. The plastic pollution of today is invoking that same determination. How was the world reacting to these events as our level of pollution awareness became more and more heightened? In 1973 and 1982, the United Nations held conferences that addressed the world's development and environment.
They recognized that there was an urgent need to reconcile economic development with environmental protection and to conserve our resources.
In 1987, the United Nations produced the Brundtland Report that for the first time identified the need for sustainable development and firmly placed the environment and how to protect it from pollution on the political agenda. The underlying principle of sustainability was to encourage development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This fundamental principle, this mainstream megatrend of the pollution awareness river, has grown and shaped thought enormously for the past 30 years. The mighty currents of the mainstream megatrends had started to gather pace. Also in 1987, our growing concern for pollution received a reward with the signing of the Montreal Protocol to protect the Earth's ozone layer from destruction by chemical contaminants. This first agreement to protect the atmosphere would be followed by many, many more. In 1992, at the Rio de Janeiro United Nations Earth Summit, a major focus was the idea that increasing levels of predominantly carbon dioxide pollution cause global warming and climate change. Human industrial activity, largely by the world's most developed countries, was shown to be unsustainable and harming all of our futures. In 1997, the KYOTO Protocol was created with the idea of limiting carbon dioxide emissions and other gases by industrial nations to reduce the climate change damage. The huge megatrend of concerns for our atmosphere was well and truly established. In 2000, the United Nations held a MILLENIUM Summit, at which the Millennium Development Goals were formed and agreed to by 191 countries and 22 international organizations. Of the 8 goals, 6 were focused on issues like eradication of poverty and human health and education. Only 1 addressed environmental sustainability. In 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals were created as a follow-up by 193 countries and civil society on a global scale. Of the 17 goals, 7 were directly related to limiting the impacts of human intervention and pollution on the planet. The change in focus, the concentration on care for the planet as well as ourselves, is clear. These goals are the basis for many national and global policies on how the world is developing and working today, a huge part of the mainstream megatrends. In 2006, Al Gore released his documentary on global warming called An Inconvenient Truth.
In our opinion, the impacts of this film is one of the biggest factors in global environmental awareness.
Calling for urgent action to halt climate change, this film was loved and praised by some, hated and criticized by others. The controversy only added to the publicity, and climate change, carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases entered the public mainstream forever. A huge amount of work started, and in 2015, at the United Nations conference, the Paris Agreement was formed, where nearly 200 countries gave undertakings to limit temperature increases to less than 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels and actually aim for 1.5 degrees. The overwhelming focus is on energy and fossil fuels, which cause about 60% of greenhouse gas emissions, almost entirely by carbon dioxide pollution. You can say and think what you like about climate change, whether you believe it or not, whether it's caused by humans or not. The fact is that the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased by 45% due to human activity, and this pollution is causing more heat to be retained in the atmosphere. There is now a huge impetus to change energy to low-carbon renewable sources. This is called the energy transition, and it's being dominated by wind and solar technology. But at the end of 2018, only 26% of energy generated came from renewable resources. In 2018, new renewable power generation installations were greater than all new generating capacity of fossil fuels combined for the 4th year in a row, and 57 countries declared their intention to become 100% dependent on renewable energy in the future. But when you consider that renewables are getting comparable in price to new investments in fossil fuel energy, and electricity storage problems are being resolved, why wouldn't you do that? A result of the energy transition and climate change awareness is that now big business is involved.
They are being asked how they are dealing with this, and this has changed the way we work and will change the work of the future.
Where are you in this river? You need to get in, otherwise you will be left behind like a spectator as the world moves on. Do you want to get in, but don't know how to? Or are you lost in the currents? Will you sink or will you swim? Are you just going to float along to an uncertain destination? Or are you going to navigate to your port of choice? Are you ready to grasp the opportunities to optimize your businesses for the future?
Our mission and purpose by interacting with this river is to help you understand how to integrate into these massive currents, how to navigate in these massive forces. We do this because we know the future of our world will be better with sustainable and innovative businesses. More robust companies whose leaders are navigating and guiding the mainstream. Companies whose workers can go home and say, hey, we're part of this. Companies whose clients can be satisfied their support is a contribution for good. Companies that are prepared for the future because we've learned from the past and are ready for change today. It's crucial not to get left behind nor swept away.